The rescue captain Marcus Kane was 3 sips into his morning coffee when the emergency beacon shattered the peaceful silence of his ship's bridge. The Starlight Runner had been drifting through the Epsilon sector for 2 days, hauling medical supplies to the outer colonies when the distress signal cut through space like a desperate scream. Marcus set down his mug and moved to the communication console. The signal was weak but persistent, broadcasting on an old emergency frequency that most ships had stopped monitoring years ago. He enhanced the audio and heard a woman's voice, barely audible through heavy static. "This is passenger transport. Celestial Dawn requesting immediate assistance. Hull breach in sectors 4 and 7. Life support failing. Please, anyone who receives this message, we are dying." Marcus checked his navigation display. The signal was coming from Xerion Prime, a planet that had been marked as hazardous for the past 3 years. Violent atmospheric storms made landing dangerous, and the surface was known to be hostile to human life. The smart choice would be to report the distress call to the authorities and continue on his route. But Marcus had never been known for making smart choices when lives were at stake. The Starlight Runner changed course, its engines humming with increased power as Marcus pushed the ship toward Xerion Prime. Through the viewport he could see the planet growing larger, its surface obscured by swirling clouds of toxic gas and electrical storms. Lightning danced between the atmospheric layers, creating a deadly light show that would challenge even the most experienced pilot. "Computer, scan for the source of that distress signal," Marcus commanded as his ship entered the planet's upper atmosphere. The vessel shook violently as it encountered the first layer of storm activity. "Signal originates from coordinates 127.4 by 89.7 on the planet's eastern continent," the computer responded in its calm, artificial voice. "Warning, atmospheric conditions are deteriorating rapidly. Recommend immediate departure." Marcus ignored the warning and continued his descent. Through the storm clouds, he could see the wreckage of a ship scattered across a rocky plateau. The Celestial Dawn had been a beautiful vessel once, judging by the elegant curves of its remaining hull sections. Now it was a burning ruin, with plasma fires erupting from multiple breaches in its structure. The landing was rough. Xerion Prime's surface was unstable, and the constant seismic activity made it difficult to find solid ground. Marcus set the Starlight Runner down as close to the wreckage as he dared, then began preparing for a rescue mission that would test every skill he had learned in 20 years of deep space travel. His environmental suit was an older model, but reliable. Marcus checked its seals twice before activating the oxygen recycler and stepping into the airlock. The atmosphere outside was a poisonous mixture of sulfur compounds and methane gas, with temperatures hot enough to melt most standard equipment. Lightning continued to strike the wreckage randomly, creating additional hazards for anyone foolish enough to approach on foot. The first thing Marcus noticed about the crash site was how wrong it looked. The Celestial Dawn had been torn apart by its impact, but the debris pattern suggested the ship had been hit by weapons fire before it crashed. Scorch marks on the hull indicated directed energy weapons, not the random damage of a mechanical failure or navigation error. Marcus pushed his suspicions aside and focused on the immediate problem. Somewhere in that burning wreckage was a survivor who needed help. He activated his suit's scanning systems and began searching for life signs among the twisted metal and flames. The scan detected a single human biosignature in what had once been the ship's passenger section. Marcus studied the layout through his helmet display, planning the safest route through the debris field. The path would take him through areas where the hull was still intact, but several sections were on fire, and the ship's power core was showing signs of instability. Moving carefully, Marcus began his approach to the wreckage. Each step required caution as the ground beneath him was covered with sharp metal fragments and pools of burning fuel. His suit's cooling system was working overtime to keep him from overheating in the extreme temperatures. The entrance he chose led him through what had been the ship's main corridor. The walls were buckled and twisted, creating a maze of obstacles that forced him to crawl in some places and climb over debris in others. Emergency lighting flickered sporadically, casting eerie shadows that made navigation even more difficult as he moved deeper into the wreckage. Marcus could hear the groaning of stressed metal and the hiss of escaping gases. The ship was slowly tearing itself apart, and he knew he had only minutes before the structure became too unstable to navigate safely. The biosignature led him to what appeared to have been a luxury passenger suite. Even damaged by the crash, the room showed signs of expensive furnishings and elegant design. The bulkheads were decorated with precious metals, and the scattered belongings suggested someone of considerable wealth and status had been traveling in this section. That was when Marcus found her. The woman was trapped beneath a fallen beam, unconscious but breathing. Her clothing, though torn and stained with soot, was clearly of the finest quality. Rich fabrics, intricate embroidery, and jewelry that sparkled even in the dim emergency lighting marked her as someone of importance. Her dark hair was streaked with ash and her face bore cuts and bruises from the crash, but she was unmistakably beautiful. Marcus checked his scanner again. Her vital signs were weak but stable. She had suffered injuries, but nothing that appeared immediately life-threatening. The beam pinning her down was heavy, but his suit's servo-assisted strength would be enough to lift it if he could find the right leverage point. Working quickly, Marcus positioned himself beside the fallen beam and activated his suit's power assist. The servos in his arms and back whined with effort as he lifted the heavy metal structure, just enough for the woman to be pulled free. She moaned softly as he moved her, but did not regain consciousness. Looking at her more closely, Marcus noticed details that suggested noble birth or at least significant wealth. Her hands were soft and uncalloused, showing no signs of manual labor. The jewelry she wore was genuine precious metal and gems, not the synthetic alternatives used by most travelers. Even her injuries seemed to have been treated with expensive medical supplies before the crash. A section of the ceiling chose that moment to collapse, sending a shower of sparks and debris across the room. The ship's structure was failing faster than Marcus had anticipated. He needed to get both of them out immediately. Lifting the woman carefully, Marcus began the treacherous journey back through the wreckage. She was lighter than he had expected, but carrying an unconscious person through a maze of twisted metal and open flames was challenging, even with his powered suit. Several times he had to stop and find alternate routes when passages became blocked by falling debris. The ship's power core began emitting warning tones as Marcus reached the main corridor. According to his suit's sensors, the containment field was failing, and an explosion was imminent. He increased his pace, pushing through obstacles that would have stopped him under normal circumstances. They reached the exit just as the first secondary explosions began deep within the ship. Marcus ran across the open ground toward his own vessel, the unconscious woman in his arms as the celestial dawn began its final death throes behind them. Pieces of burning debris fell around them like deadly rain. The Starlight Runner's airlock sealed just as the passenger transport's power core finally detonated. The explosion lit up the stormy sky and sent a shockwave across the plateau that made Marcus's ship rock on its landing gear. Through the viewports, he could see that nothing remained of the celestial dawn except scattered fragments of metal and a crater where the main hull had been. Marcus carried the woman to his ship's small medical bay and placed her on the examination table. The automated medical systems immediately began scanning her injuries and administering basic treatment. She had suffered a concussion, several fractured ribs, and numerous cuts and bruises, but nothing that wouldn't heal with proper care. As the medical bay worked, Marcus returned to the bridge and initiated departure procedures. Xerion Prime was becoming more unstable by the hour, and he wanted to be well clear of the planet before the next major storm system arrived. The Starlight Runner lifted off smoothly, leaving the wreckage and flames behind. It was only when they reached orbit that Marcus allowed himself to relax. He had saved a life, possibly someone very important judging by her appearance and possessions. The rescue had been successful, and now all that remained was to get her to proper medical facilities and help her contact her family or associates. But as he looked back at the medical bay, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that something about this situation wasn't right. The ship's wreckage had shown signs of weapons damage. The woman's injuries seemed minor for such a catastrophic crash, and there had been something about the debris pattern that suggested the accident might not have been an accident at all. The woman stirred on the medical table, her eyes opening slowly as she regained consciousness. Marcus moved to her side, ready to reassure her that she was safe. But when their eyes met, he saw something there that made his instincts scream a warning he was not yet ready to understand. The truth unveiled. The woman's eyes opened slowly, confusion giving way to what appeared to be relief as she saw Marcus standing beside the medical table. She tried to sit up, wincing at the pain from her injuries, and Marcus gently helped her into a more comfortable position. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice still weak from the ordeal. "I thought I was going to die in that wreckage. My name is Lady Elena Voss of the Centauri Courts. I was traveling to the Outer Rim on diplomatic business when our ship was attacked." Marcus studied her face as she spoke. Her accent was refined, matching the expensive clothing and jewelry she wore. Everything about her presentation suggested nobility, but something in her eyes didn't match the innocent victim she claimed to be. There was a calculating intelligence there that seemed at odds with someone who had just survived a traumatic crash. "I'm Captain Marcus Kane," he replied, keeping his voice neutral. "My ship is the Starlight Runner. We're currently en route to the nearest medical station, but I need to contact the authorities about the attack on your vessel. Can you tell me who might have been responsible?" Elena's expression became troubled, and she looked away from Marcus's gaze. "I'm not certain. There are always political tensions in the Centauri system. It could have been rebels, pirates, or even rival noble houses. The courts are not always peaceful places." While she spoke, Marcus activated his ship's computer system to verify her identity. If she was truly a member of the Centauri Courts, there would be records of her diplomatic mission and travel authorization. The computer worked silently in the background while he continued the conversation. "What I saw of your ship's damage suggested military-grade weapons," Marcus said, watching her reaction carefully. "The scorch patterns were very precise, almost surgical. That's not typical of pirate attacks." Elena nodded, still not meeting his eyes directly. "Yes, whoever attacked us was well-equipped and professional. They knew exactly where to strike to disable our defenses quickly. It felt like they were specifically hunting us." The computer completed its search and displayed the results on Marcus's private screen. There was no record of any Lady Elena Voss in the Centauri Diplomatic Corps. More concerning, there was no record of any ship named Celestial Dawn being registered for diplomatic missions in the past 6 months. Either the computer's records were incomplete, or Elena was lying about her identity. Marcus decided to probe further. "I'll need to contact the Centauri authorities to report your rescue and the attack on your ship. Who should I speak with in your government? I want to make sure they know you're safe." For just a moment, Elena's composed mask slipped, and Marcus saw something that looked like panic in her eyes. She recovered quickly, but not before he noticed the telltale signs of deception. "That won't be necessary," she said, her voice becoming more formal. "I can handle communications with my own people once we reach the medical station. There are security protocols that must be followed." Before Marcus could respond, his ship's proximity alarms began sounding. The bridge displays lit up with warnings as multiple contacts appeared on the sensor array. 3 ships had just decloaked around the Starlight Runner, their weapons systems already powering up. "This is Commander Reyes of the Interstellar Security Force," came a voice over the communication system. "Captain Kane, you are ordered to surrender immediately. Cut your engines and prepare to be boarded." Marcus looked at Elena, who had gone completely pale. Her hands were shaking, and the fear in her eyes was no longer the result of her recent ordeal. This was the fear of someone whose carefully laid plans had gone wrong. "Elena," Marcus said quietly, "I think you need to tell me what's really happening. Here." She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. When she opened them again, the pretense of nobility was gone, replaced by the hard expression of a trained operative. "My name isn't Elena Voss," she said, her accent shifting to something more common and less refined. "I'm Agent Sarah Chen, and I was ordered to use myself as bait to capture you." Marcus felt a cold knot form in his stomach. "Capture me? For what?" "You're wanted for stealing classified military technology 3 years ago," Sarah continued, her voice now completely different from the refined lady she had been pretending to be. "The crashed ship, the distress call, my injuries, it was all staged. We knew about your reputation for never leaving anyone behind, especially someone who appeared to be innocent and helpless." The pieces began falling into place in Marcus's mind. The weapons damage to the ship that had looked too precise. The minor injuries despite the catastrophic crash, the expensive clothing and jewelry that had seemed designed to suggest importance and wealth. It had all been a carefully orchestrated trap. "The ISF has been hunting you for years," Sarah said, looking genuinely troubled by her role in the deception. "When they couldn't track you down through normal means, they decided to exploit your one predictable weakness, your compulsion to help people in danger." Marcus moved to the bridge, his mind racing through possible responses to the situation. The 3 ships surrounding him were military vessels, well-armed and properly shielded. His own ship was faster and more maneuverable, but not designed for combat against those odds. "So what happens now?" Marcus asked, his hands moving across the control panels as he assessed his options. "You complete your mission and I spend the rest of my life in a military prison?" Sarah followed him to the bridge, moving stiffly due to her injuries. "That was the plan," she said quietly. "But there's something you should know. I was never supposed to survive this mission. The ISF gave me a suicide pill and told me to take it once you were captured. They couldn't risk me talking about the illegal methods they used to trap you." Marcus paused in his preparations and looked at her. "So you're as expendable as I am?" "More expendable," Sarah replied bitterly. "You're wanted alive so they can interrogate you about the stolen technology. I'm just a tool they used to get to you." The communication system crackled to life again. "Captain Kane, you have 2 minutes to comply with our surrender order. After that, we will disable your ship and take you by force." Marcus's hands flew across the control panels, activating systems that Sarah hadn't known existed. Hidden armor plating slid into place around the ship's hull. Weapon systems that had been disguised as cargo containers deployed from concealed compartments. The ship's engine signature changed as a more powerful drive system came online. "What is all this?" Sarah asked, staring at the transformed bridge displays. "The ISF isn't the only organization with secrets," Marcus replied, his voice taking on a harder edge. "The technology they think I stole, I didn't steal it, I helped develop it. And this ship contains prototypes they don't even know exist." Sarah's eyes widened as she realized the implications. "You're not just a smuggler or a thief. You're a defector. I'm someone who learned that the ISF was planning to use advanced technology to control entire star systems," Marcus said as he prepared for combat. "I couldn't be part of that, so I took the research data and disappeared. They've been hunting me ever since." The first enemy ship opened fire, its energy beams striking the Starlight Runner's shields. But instead of the expected damage, the shields absorbed the energy and redirected it back at the attackers. The experimental defense system that Marcus had helped design was working perfectly. "Impossible," came Commander Reyes's voice over the communication channel. "How are you doing that?" Marcus didn't answer. Instead, he activated the ship's phase drive, a system that could briefly shift the vessel out of normal space-time. The Starlight Runner seemed to flicker and become translucent as it moved through the enemy formation, avoiding their weapons and striking back with precision shots that disabled their engines without destroying them. "Sarah," Marcus said as he maneuvered through the battle, "I'm offering you a choice. Stay with me and help me continue fighting against the ISF's plans, or take an escape pod and try to convince them you were just following orders." Sarah watched the battle displays, seeing how easily Marcus was outmaneuvering ships that should have been superior to his own. She thought about the suicide pill hidden in her clothing, the orders to eliminate herself once the mission was complete, and the years she had spent believing she was serving a just cause. "If I stay with you," she said, "what happens to me?" "You become Sarah Chen instead of Agent Chen," Marcus replied as he disabled the last enemy ship. "You get to choose your own missions instead of following orders that might get you killed." The ISF ships were drifting helplessly now, their engines damaged and their weapons offline. Marcus had been careful not to harm their crews, but they would be unable to pursue him when he left the area. Sarah looked at the escape pod controls, then at Marcus. For the first time in years, she had a real choice to make, not just orders to follow. The woman who had been trained to manipulate and deceive found herself in a situation where honesty was the only option that made sense. "I've been lying and pretending to be someone else for so long that I almost forgot who I really am. she said quietly. Maybe it's time to find out. Marcus nodded and set course for the outer territories, where the ISF's authority was limited and people like them could disappear if they were careful. Welcome to the crew of the Starlight Runner, Sarah Chen. I hope you don't regret your choice. As the ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving the disabled ISF vessels behind, Sarah realized that for the first time in her adult life, she was exactly where she wanted to be. The mission to capture Marcus Kane had failed, but perhaps something better had begun in its place. The stars stretched around them as they entered hyperspace, and both Sarah and Marcus understood that their lives had changed forever. The hunter had become the hunted, the bait had become the ally, and somewhere, in the vast galaxy ahead of them, lay possibilities neither had imagined when this strange day began.